We're going. Okay. All right. So you all have a chosen image. I'm doing the bar at the Folie Bergère because I like it. And I have a copy of that here, ready to go. And I have already graphite transferred just a corner of it, because otherwise I'd be here all evening, like showing you the whole thing, and you don't need that much information. But you do need to see, like, specifically how I want you to mix the paint for this, because one is a triadic color palette, and that is basically just the yellow, the cerulean, and the magenta, and white. Just them. No. Okay? And so these guys are going to be what I use for the triad. I'm going to show you, I'm going to do both. I'm going to do one for the triad, one for the monochrome. The monochrome will be easier because you already kind of did that. That's what the grayscale is. Only now you're just throwing a color in there too. All right? So what you want to do, so I'll do this one up here. Get small brushes too. You know, in theory, all of you, and based on what I've seen from all of your images, most of your images will require you to use brushes this small. You probably won't use this for very much. I might use it for example, I just picked this corner of the bar at the Folie Bergère, and here's her, you know, her bustle and her butt. Basically, it's like the barmaid. Well, it's actually a tight jacket over a gray skirt. And so I might, you know, if you have areas that are this big, you know, you can go in and use a big brush. But generally, you know, you're going to stay with the smaller ones. So I've got the smaller ones over here. Got my rag, got my paints. We'll do the triad first. Now, this is what I want you to do. Okay, so I've got my blue, and this isn't, you don't have to make a whole ton of this stuff, but you might want to have a push pin. Oh, come on. Let's see. I need something to poke it with. Let's see if I can peel this off. Sometimes the acrylic's dry. Actually, this is a good demo. Sometimes they dry. No, and you can, like, kind of scrape it out. I have push pins in my bag, but I don't want to stop now. Okay, let's try that. Please, blue, come out. Bastard. Dried up. Fuck it. Anyway. And there is one in the bag, but like I said, I brought one on purpose. And I'm like, nah, this will be okay. I'll just pour it out. And you just need a little bit, all right? Just boop, like that. That's all you need. Okay. A little bit of yellow and a little bit of magenta. Now, up till now, everything we've been doing is you mixing these colors with one another. The color scales, complementary scales. I want you to keep these colors separate. Do not mix them with one another. I want it to be a true triad, like the description is. They are any three colors that are equally distant spread on the color wheel. So like it would be, you know, yellow, blue, and red, or it's cyan, magenta, yellow, but they're separated in equal amounts. And they are also, as I mentioned last week during the slide lecture, this is CMY, and then by mixing these you would get RGB. But I only want a CMY plus white to change the values for this. So this gives you a lot of options. So you're never mixing this mixing these with each other, but you are adding white sometimes or sometimes not. And the goal is I want you to replicate the lightness or darkness. The colors do not have to be accurate, but they do have to be lighter or darker. So taking a quick look at this little corner of my image, the darkest areas are here. It's basically her black jacket. So it's like here, you know, all of this. These bottles are pretty dark. Then her hand, like that I traced here, her arm, her forearm and hand are very, very light. Those are probably the lightest things in the image. And the bar, the marble bar, is also very light. So you're just making quick judgments about what's light, what's dark, what's medium. I don't want they don't have to be, I don't want them orange because you'd have to mix yellow and magenta to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's see, I'll just do the dark ones first. Now, when you're doing the triad, this is the darkest that it gets, is actually magenta if you layer it enough, if you don't mix it with anything. But magenta and blue out of the tube are really, really dark. You can't get any darker than this because I won't let you mix them with one another. The only thing you can do is add white to them. And the goal of this is to mimic the light and dark of the original image, whatever that is, and to explore tinting and toning and shading. You're only going to be tinting in this assignment. You're toning and shading in the monochrome. So I'll take, since nothing can be darker than this, that will be my selection. Because if I added white to it, let's spread it out a little. Actually, you know what, I'm going to test this. Let's see. There's blue. And I'll see magenta. The thing about magenta is it looks darker when it's all piled up like this. But as you know, streaky. Yeah, that's lighter. Okay, once you thin it out a little bit. So to hell with that. So I'm going to start with the blue, which is the darkest color I can get. So you're not going to get a real strong range of lights and darks. But it will be similar. And as I mentioned, the important thing is not to make it an accurate color, because it won't be, just to make it an accurate lightness. So, and again, I'm not going to go into all the gory detail with this, but like, where is it dark? It's dark down here. It's dark where by the flowers are. Okay. And so you can use a slightly larger brush just for the bigger areas like this. Okay. Dark, dark, dark. These bottles are really dark. Also, if you have a painting like this that you're referring to, a lot of your work that you showed me that you're working from is more graphic. It has like hard edges and stuff. Then just like, you know, keep it within the lines, as they say, like, you know, paint by numbers, keep it that way. But if you want to do something like this, you know, where you're painting a painting, you know, and you want it to look more painterly, I don't care if you do dry brush technique things like this. Like, I'll just take a little bit of the blue, add a bunch of white to it. And for these lighter little highlights, I'll just go boom, boom. You know, and so they're really rough. Like that, there's some highlights here, here, here. You know, I will just very quickly, and the great thing about this paint is, because it dries so fast, you can overpaint things, but always have your image visible so that you can refer to it. So I'm going to go in here, and I know that's where the buttons are. So I'm just going to paint them all over. You're like, oh my God, I can't see them anymore. Yeah, you can. They're right there. Really, I'm serious. They're like right there. So wet into wet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoop, that's a little more white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buttons. Everything's fine. Okay, that's why you have this to refer to, because you will cover up some color areas. Now, what do I want to do with my oranges? I'm going to go just for, and so just because I'm interested in seeing you use a lot of different colors, you know, I would take a real pale yellow and make her arm that. And in terms of, I know we fought this terrible battle for the last several weeks with streaky paint. Can you add water to the paint in this assignment? No. You can. Isn't that nice? Explore. That's another way of lightening the color. You can either add white to it, or you can just add water to it. Maybe a little more blue, but not much, right? So you can do that. And then it's still wet, so maybe I'll put it, okay, it doesn't have to be about the color, so let's put magenta, even though these reflection stripes are blue. So, and this little watercolory technique, kind of fun, like it's wet into wet. Like that. This has the famous Bass Ale logo, but I'll just do that. I mean, it's red, so I'll just use a little magenta here. There's that little triangle, that's the logo of Bass Ale. It still is. Like if you go to the store and buy Bass Ale, it still looks like it did when Manet was painting it. So looking at this is kind of a medium color, this green here. So I'll have this, maybe a little bit of white. Down here, this reflection is dark. And you can see that these colors are crazy inaccurate. And you won't get, as I said, the full range of light and dark, but I want you to get close. As close as you can, given the limitations of this paint. But as you see, you either have the paint out of the bottle or the paint with white added, so it will be very saturated. There won't be any browns in this, any grays. Everything will be really saturated. You're just trying to make the values, the brightnesses, match. That's the hard part. So I'm looking at the oranges. Yellow won't work because anything with yellow, if I add white to it, it's just going to get lighter. So yellow is saved for the really light stuff, like the things that are white or close to white, like her flesh tones, the lights in the background, all those things. But for all the medium stuff, like these little guys, I can't use that. I could use blue if I wanted to, but then it's blue on top of blue. So instead, I'll do the magenta again. Make it a little more medium. And I'm going to compare it this way. It's like, that looks kind of okay. Let's see what it looks like on the board. Yeah, not bad. Maybe a little more white. Yeah, it's too much. And you can paint on top of, you can layer this, which is also something I never really allowed you to do in the past. And again, I'm doing this really rough. I'm just doing